Welcome to Essential Dynamics. I'm Derek Hudson, host of the Essential Dynamics podcast. I'm really excited to continue the conversation with Lawrence Roberts, who we had on last time. Lawrence, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you for having me back.
I feel like I went from nervous to like calm but confident in 25 minutes of conversations about networking. And I'm going to have to remember this conversation next time I'm have an opportunity to go someplace where I would convince myself I don't want to go. I tell you, my experience with those things is I don't want to go, and then I have a really good time, and it sounds like, I don't know, youth camp or something like that. But I always have a great time, and the conversations and being with really interesting people is really helpful. So maybe I'll set this one up a little bit. In Essential Dynamics, one of the things that we found is that whether we like it or not, when we're in an organization, there's a system going on. There's a way of doing things. And typically we don't design that system. We just solve problems, and it builds around us. And when you're in the system, you can't see the system. So it's really valuable to step back and to look at how your organization creates value. And it's especially useful to have a way to think about systems to be able to do that. So that's the work of Essential Dynamics, if I want to put it that way. You, in our last conversation, introduced this a very genuine and useful tool to get a lot of things done in a business. And a couple of things that you emphasized were you have to be in it for the long term, and you have to be actually genuinely interested in the success of others for it to work. And I thought that those are the kinds of things that help me not feel like I'm a pushy salesperson when I go off to talk about my business or to talk with people about anything. So if we think about networking as a tool to add to the system that you're designing to run your business, it's a system of its own that can plug into a system, if we want to put it that way. You've spent many years bringing people together and teaching them how to do that. So I suspect you're taking a bit of a system approach that you're trying to put in people's hands so that they can use it. Can you just walk through some of your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And on the last podcast, I talked more about building those relationships. But the bigger challenge is, how do you get in front of those people? How do you find those people? Or how do you even get to the point where you can have a conversation with somebody? And I think that's actually, that's the first step of the system, or maybe we even back it up and say, the first step is having that desire and that motivation. That's probably the hardest thing is getting out of your head, getting over the fear of talking to people, maybe possibly the fear of rejection. But as I've been working with other people and coaching, there definitely is a system. So part of that system is a numbers game. You know, you do need to approach a certain amount of people before you're going to be able to initiate good, meaningful conversations and start building those relationships. And so I would say the first step in that system is getting out in the community, anywhere where there's a group of people gathered. Okay, so I say it like that because oftentimes when we think networking, the first thing we think of is large groups with a bunch of people standing around and chatting and socializing and things like that. That is part of it for sure, but maybe we also need to wrap our heads around the fact that sitting with a group of parents at our daughter's basketball game is also networking. Or if we are going to a trade show, that is also networking, right? Or a church event, or a business mindset group or coaching, or those are all, any type of group collaboration is an opportunity to network. And so one of my favorite things to really start opening up conversations is going to things where people are standing still and they have to talk to you. So, like a trade show. A trade show is a great place to meet people. They all want to talk to you. You want to talk to people, right? So starting those conversations, maybe gathering a little bit of information from who those people are, not taking too much of their time. Obviously, they're there for a purpose, and then following up, which we'll talk about later. Or when you are at those maybe soccer game, or maybe you're on a PTA, opening up those conversations with people that are already sitting beside you, already in the room, have a lot of the same beliefs or values as you, starting to invite those people for something outside of the meeting. Would you go for a lunch, or we'll stop by a coffee shop and have a drink or something? Or if, it's young entrepreneurs, young business professionals, young trades, I love to invite them to our office, because in the construction world, we typically have a bigger setup than most people do. And it's a great way to introduce them to what maybe could be or what might happen in the future. So that system of getting out of your head and looking around you to see what's out there, when you are in those situations, connect small conversations with the goal in mind to book later time with that individual. I honestly struggle myself personally in those large networking groups. And so what I try to do is I set a goal. I don't want to just go around and mingle and whatever. I want to get into 3 meaningful conversations or 5 meaningful conversations, and I want to come away with 5 business cards that I can follow up after, right? That also gives me the excuse when I have those 5 business cards that I can leave. They're a bit overwhelming for me. However, that's kind of the next step is being out in the community, meeting people with the intent of setting up one-to-one meetings with them after. So after you have maybe a personal business card, or they gave you their contact information on your phone, the next step in that process is actually following up with them. Continuing with that intent, booking those meetings. Now you have a personal connection. Hey, it was a wonderful time meeting with you. You can do this through call, email, even more so now is text. I had a great time talking about this, reminding them of your conversation. Once you've related to them again, invite them to something, or maybe invite yourself. Hey, I would love to stop by your office, continue our conversation that we had on this, and wanted to know what's your favorite drink of choice or whatever I can bring by as I come. Right. So initiating that next step. And then once you get the opportunity to meet with them, one of my favorite things is to let them talk. Find out as much about them. Listen, let them share as much as they want about themselves. And you know what often happens when you do that, when you ask really good questions and you've now started building those relationships, is they realize what's going on, and they turn the tide back on you, and they will ask you questions. If you're clever and you work it well to the point where you've done a lot of listening, and they start asking questions, it would be a great thing to say something like, what, I actually came here to learn more about you. I would love to tell you more about me at some other time. Maybe I can invite you over to my office, or maybe we can book another time. But I'd actually dedicated this time to you, right? You may even consider that a power move. But what it is if, again, you've booked your time and you've set your mindset to learn about how you can help them, then genuinely do it, right? And if they would like to meet again, great. That's awesome. We've now started building some good rapport. But once you've had that initial meeting with them.
Hey, Lawrence, can I just stop you there? Because I'm going to get personal on this. I like talking to people about the situations that they're in, because I think I have ways of helping all kinds of situations in organizations. It's what I think about. It's what I do. I can learn from situations that people tell me about without giving them any advice.
Okay.
Just because there's a data all over the place about, your boss or your customer, your board or whatever. There's all kinds of stuff going on. And so that's a valuable time if I don't do anything other than say, I'll call you again.
Mm.
And so I really like you just sort of gave me permission to say I can go in sort of detective mode or therapist mode and say, tell me all your stuff. And people usually get better at it, thinking about it as they explain it.
Yeah.
So that's helpful to them. And so they're especially like, say if you ask good questions. So that's a good meeting. Well, Lawrence came by and man, I really like that guy. Well, what does he do? Well, I'm not really sure because we didn't get to that, but I feel better about my situation now because I told him about it or something. Yeah. So there's a lot to that.
And I agree. And I do say that, but sometimes people are not conversationalists per se. Mm-hmm. And so you do maybe need to not just maybe listen the entire time, but also contribute to the conversation and allow it to go forward. And again, probably with some of those good thought-provoking questions. But in the end, if you do have a great conversation with somebody, you can't just leave it there. You've begun something. So continuing along with that process for that system is the continued follow-up. Well, I've enjoyed this. I hope you have as well. I would love to stop by again. Or, is there a favorite place that you like to go for lunch? Or I just had a great lunch a couple weeks ago at this place and I loved it. Or a cute little shop. Or, invite them to your office or whatever the situation is. To leave with an invitation and then an invitation to follow up. So hopefully during that conversation, you've learned a little bit about that and you can maybe potentially follow them on a social media or a LinkedIn or something. And as they are posting things, you can comment, you can support them, you can show that you're interested in what they're interested in, maybe share articles or maybe send a follow-up email with, hey, I was reading this and it made me think of you. Is this something that you found interested? Or like going back to what I said with motorcycles, I look at so many of those posts all day. I could share one a week or two a week. I don't know. But that's key. And then as you're going about your daily life and you're meeting other people, you're going to find people that would probably be a good connection for this other person. So as part of the process, you have to learn about them in order to do what you should and provide value for the relationship or maybe them as a professional or what they might need in their life. And so the last step is that continuation of the check-ins and the follow-ups and providing value. So, the initial contact, where to find those people, getting out in the community, how to initiate or set goals to follow up and to actually meet those people in person and have a sit-down conversation with them. Once the conversation is done, to follow up, maybe to have another one, and then to add value to the relationship and those steady contacts going forward. So that's something that if you are constantly networking, you will have people in different levels or different phases in that process that you will be continuing to strengthen and build that relationship all along the way.
I like it. That's not very many steps. And there's a lot, like if you come up with that, there's a lot of work there.
Especially if you're doing it with hundreds or potentially thousands of people at the same time.
Yeah, there's a lot of work there. So I think what would be really helpful now is if you could, this is put you on the spot, but think of some stories or examples of where the pieces connected maybe after quite some time. And the value that you added turned into something really big for, maybe both sides.
Yes. So I can, as a business owner, when I bought my first franchise. It was in Saskatchewan. And so my family and I, we moved out there to Saskatoon, and we ran that franchise for about 2 years. And I felt like I could do more. I had more capacity. And so I reached out to the national office of BNI, and I said, I have capacity to do more. Is there additional work or something I could do? And they introduced me to a franchise owner who was looking to retire, and said, well, maybe you could look at buying this region. When I bought Saskatchewan, it was pretty much a brand new franchise, so it was like entry level prices. This next franchise was it was almost 400 members, and was valued close to $500,000, which I did not have to be able to buy that. But I felt like I was practicing what I am preaching, and I had built a lot of friendships and relationships with business professionals over the years, friends in the Saskatoon community. And so for the first time that I really genuinely felt that I was calling in favors or leveraging that network for something that I needed, it did not disappoint. And through the connections and the friends and the relationships that I had, I was able to raise, find investors and raise the capital that I needed in order to buy this region, and then leveraged that same network again to buy the third region. And so I think to myself, if I would have just kind of, kept my head down and done my job and, not practiced what I was teaching and training other people to do, I would have never been able to do that. And, anytime you're asking somebody for money, that takes a large amount of trust between individuals in order to do that. So to be able to raise a few $100,000 in order to do that, I think is a perfect example of being able to build a network of value, and that network actually work for you when you need it. Yeah.
That's a great story, because I have to think for those first 2 years, nowhere in the back of your mind are you thinking, I think I'm going to hit this guy up to invest in my business someday.
Never. No, I was investing in people because I believe in people and I love networking. So, yeah.
That was such a good one. I'm going to ask for one more.
Okay. Yeah. So, because I actually have a few stories that I used to share with people, but another really good story of mine like a situation I don't know how I would have got myself out of if it wasn't for the connections that I had built. Was actually, there was a time where I was just in the middle of selling my original roofing company and had a bunch of money and everything tied up in that. And then I was right in the process of buying my first BNI franchise in Saskatchewan, and I had a bunch of money tied up in that. And so because I had money tied up in these two situations, I was very, very cash poor at the time, and just needed a few months to kind of get things figured out and, back on track. But at that time, my vehicle died. I was down. I had one vehicle between my wife and I had already started I was living in Edmonton and I was driving out to Saskatchewan, and I had no vehicle. And so I took my wife's vehicle, which left her at home with 5 kids with no vehicle for the week while I was gone. And we were struggling. And interesting enough is I was friends with a gentleman who owned a Honda dealership, and he caught wind of my situation, and and he reached out to me actually.
Wow.
And he said, he's like, I hear you're in a tough spot. And he's like, why don't you come in? And I was like, you are the nicest person, but I'm just not in a position to like buy or finance or do anything. I got a lot of things kind of in the fire. I just need a few months. And he's just like, just come in. I was like, okay, I'll come in. And then he sits me down. He's like, can you afford $250 today? And I was like, yeah, I can afford $250 today. He's like, good. Go talk to my finance person. I got a car for you and they'll take care of you. It's like, hey, I don't know what this means. And so I go talk to the finance person. They're sitting me down. They're like, I have no idea what this is, but I'm supposed to get $250 from you and give you the keys to this car. And I didn't even know this for a while after. And this person, unfortunately, has passed away since then. But he had bought the car from his own dealership with his personal money, and he was financing me the car on his own. And he was holding me over until I could finance it properly, like I should. And then I found out he had actually sold his car dealership at just a few months after, financed it for me as a co-signer so that it didn't inconvenience me. When I found out that, then I just like, yeah, I just paid the whole thing and it was done. But anyway, at a time where I was in such a pinch, because he was really nice to me and we had a great relationship, he bought me a car and floated me until I was able to pay for it, which was amazing.
I'm really glad I asked for the second story with Lawrence.
So, yeah, which, I mean, it does take me back, and thank you for reminding me. I hadn't shared those stories in a while. The power of your network, it can be something that you don't even understand until, you know, you need it. And if you had actually genuinely built those relationships, invested in those people, there's no reason why they wouldn't do the same for you when you need it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we got to end it there because we can't top that. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing both your wisdom and your personal experiences. And I think we've got a different idea about networking than certainly I had, and a bit of a system that we can apply. So thank you very much. Lawrence, tell us again where people can find you, and then tell them about the big event that's coming up right away if you're listening to this the day it comes out.
Absolutely. So I am the business development manager at Jason Global Roofing, and you can always find me here by calling our office number and going onto our website, which is jasonglobal.com. And then our company, Jason Global, is sponsoring a networking event that I am hosting for the Latter-day Saint community, for those that are business professionals and sales professionals that want to get to know each other, meet each other, support each other. We're hosting an event on February 28th at the Bison Lodge, and you can get your tickets on Eventbrite, or you can reach out to me and we can have those links put in here.
Thanks very much. Now, we have an international audience. So the Bison Lodge is in Edmonton, Alberta, in the beautiful river valley, right?
That's correct.
And not everything is named after wild animals, but we are in the West here, and it's called Bison Lodge for a good reason. So Lawrence, thanks again. It was awesome to have you. Thank you for listening. I'm Derek with Unconstrained, and until next time, consider your quest.